In 2008, 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez disappeared from her family's backyard along with her babysitter during what should have been a routine Saturday afternoon. The police found no signs of struggle, no ransom demands, no trace of either person. The case went cold within 6 months. 15 years later, a young woman claiming to be Emma Rodriguez walked into Riverside General Hospital asking for the Chen doctor who lived next door. What she remembered about those missing 15 years would expose a secret that had been buried beneath the town for nearly 4 decades. Dr. Sarah Chen was updating patient files in the hospital's administrative wing when the call came through. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across medical charts that seemed to blur together after 12 hours of back-to-back consultations. She'd been a forensic psychiatrist at Riverside General for 8 years, but nights like this reminded her why she'd almost chosen private practice instead. The phone on her desk buzzed. "Dr. Chen, this is security. We have someone in the ER asking for the Chen doctor who lived next door. Says it's urgent." Sarah frowned, pen still hovering over a prescription form. "I think they have the wrong person. I don't live next door to the hospital." "Ma'am, she specifically asked for Dr. Sarah Chen. Says you knew her when she was little." Sarah set down her pen. Former patients occasionally showed up asking for her, though usually through proper channels. "What's her name?" "Emma Rodriguez. She's acting strange. Claims she's been missing for 15 years, but she looks like she's in her 20s. The pen slipped from Sarah's fingers, clattering onto her desk. Emma Rodriguez. The name hit her like a physical blow, dragging up memories she'd buried years ago. A little girl with dark braids, always climbing the fence between their backyards. Saturday afternoons spent pushing Emma on the tire swing her father had hung from the old oak tree. The smell of her mother's cooking drifting over from the Rodriguez house next door. And then, nothing. One day the house next door had been sold, the swing taken down, the fence repaired. Sarah's parents had told her the Rodriguez family moved away suddenly for work. She'd been 13, too caught up in her own adolescent world to question why her childhood playmate had vanished without saying goodbye. "Dr. Chen, you still there?" Sarah picked up the pen with shaking hands. "I'll be right down." The walk to the emergency department felt endless. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Emma Rodriguez would be 22 now, not 7. If someone was claiming to be her, it was either an elaborate scam or something much worse. The ER was quieter than usual for a Thursday night. Sarah found the patient in room 7, sitting upright on the examination table with her legs swinging like a child's. The motion was so familiar it made Sarah's chest tighten. The woman was definitely in her 20s, with the same dark hair and olive skin Sarah remembered, though her face had the hollow look of someone who'd seen too much. But when she turned toward Sarah, her eyes held something that made the psychiatrist's breath catch. They were still a child's eyes, wide, trusting, impossibly young. "Sarah?" The woman's face lit up with genuine joy. "You got so tall, and you're a doctor now, just like you always said you'd be." Sarah approached slowly, her medical training warring with childhood memories. "Emma? I knew you'd remember me. I kept the friendship bracelet you gave me." Emma held up her wrist, showing a faded string bracelet that looked far too old and worn for someone, while Sarah pulled up a chair beside the examination table. "Emma, what year do you think it is?" Emma frowned, the same expression she'd made as a child when faced with a difficult question. "It's 2008, October. We were supposed to go to the park with Kelly, but then—" She trailed off, her eyes growing distant. "Who's Kelly?" "My babysitter. She was 16 and really cool. She let me stay up past bedtime to watch movies." Emma's voice carried the same slight lisp Sarah remembered from childhood. But the man said we had to come with him instead. Sarah felt cold spreading through her chest. What man? The one with the white coat. He said my parents sent him to pick us up, that there was an emergency. Emma looked directly at Sarah with those unsettling young eyes. But we never got to go home. O'd supposedly been missing for only 15 years. Sarah pulled up a chair beside the examination table. Emma, what year do you think it is? Emma frowned, the same expression she'd made as a child when faced with a difficult question. It's 2008, October. We were supposed to go to the park with Kelly, but then... She trailed off, her eyes growing distant. Who's Kelly? My babysitter. She was 16 and really cool. She let me stay up past bedtime to watch movies. Emma's voice carried the same slight lisp Sarah remembered from childhood. But the man said we had to come with him instead. Sarah felt cold spreading through her chest. What man? The one with the white coat. He said my parents sent him to pick us up, that there was an emergency. Emma looked directly at Sarah with those unsettling young eyes. But we never got to go home. Sarah exchanged glances with the ER nurse who'd been standing quietly near the door, her hand hovering near the emergency call button. Emma, where have you been for the past 15 years? In the place underground, with the others. Emma's voice became smaller, more hesitant. They said we were helping with important work, that we were special. What others? Emma's expression suddenly became guarded, as if she'd said something wrong. I'm not supposed to talk about the others. Bad things happen when you talk about the others. Sarah leaned forward carefully. Emma, no one's going to hurt you here. You're safe. Can you tell me about the place underground? Emma looked around the examination room, taking in the medical equipment and sterile walls. It looked like this, but bigger and colder. There were rooms with beds and machines that made noise, and people in white coats who asked us questions all the time. What kind of questions? About what we remembered, about our families, our homes, our friends. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. They said if we forgot everything from before, we could stay together. But if we remembered too much, we'd have to go to the other place. What other place? But Emma had turned away, staring at the small window where dawn was beginning to creep across the horizon. For several minutes, she was completely silent, as if she'd forgotten Sarah was there. Then, without warning, she looked back with an expression that was far too mature for her apparent mental age. Sarah, did my parents look for me? The question broke Sarah's heart. She thought about the Rodriguez house standing empty, the for sale sign that had appeared within weeks of Emma's disappearance, the way the whole family had seemingly vanished without a trace. Emma, I need to ask you something difficult. How did you get out of the underground place? Emma's eyes filled with tears. Kelly helped me. She'd been planning it for a long time, studying the guards and the doors and the schedules. Her voice became urgent. She said someone had to get out and tell people what was happening, that someone had to make sure the others didn't get forgotten. Where is Kelly now? Emma's tears began falling freely. She didn't make it out with me. The alarms went off, and the men in white coats came running. Kelly pushed me into a tunnel and told me to keep going until I found sunlight. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. She said to find you specifically. She said you were the only person who would believe me. Sarah felt the world tilt around her. Kelly told you to find me? How did she know who I was? Because Kelly is from here too, Kelly Martinez. She lived on Elm Street before they took her. Emma looked at Sarah with desperate hope. Do you remember her? She said you might remember her from school. Sarah's blood ran cold. Kelly Martinez had been a year ahead of her in high school, a popular girl who disappeared during their junior year. The official story had been that she'd run away with an older boyfriend, but her family had insisted something terrible had happened. The case had never been solved. Emma, how many people are in the underground place? Emma became very still. I'm not supposed to count. Counting is against the rules. But you did count, didn't you? Emma nodded slowly. Kelly taught me to count in secret. She said it was important to remember how many, in case we ever got out. She took a shaky breath. There are 7 of us. Some have been there since they were babies. Some are grown up now, but they still think like children because they never got to learn how to be adults. 7 people, 7 lives stolen and hidden beneath the town Sarah had grown up in. Emma, where exactly is this underground place? Emma's expression became frightened. They said terrible things would happen if I told anyone where it was. What kind of terrible things? They said they'd hurt the others. They said they'd know if I talked, because they're always watching. Emma looked around the examination room with growing anxiety. They said they have people everywhere, in hospitals and police stations and government offices. Sarah stood up, her mind racing. If what Emma was describing was real, then they were dealing with something far larger and more dangerous than a simple kidnapping. They were looking at a systematic operation that had been operating for years, possibly decades. Emma, I need to make some phone calls. But first, I want you to know that you're safe here. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. But as Sarah reached for the door, Emma called out something that made her stop cold. Sarah? The man in the white coat who came to get me and Kelly? He knew your name too. He said the Chen family was next on his list. Sarah stood frozen in the doorway of examination room 7, Emma's words echoing in her head. The Chen family was next on his list. After 15 years, whoever had taken Emma Rodriguez was still operating, still targeting families. Still targeting her family. She returned to her chair beside Emma's bed, forcing her voice to remain calm. Emma, what did this man look like? Tall, gray hair. He always wore a white coat, even when we weren't in the medical rooms. Emma's voice became smaller. He smelled like the soap they use in hospitals, but scary. Did you ever hear his name? Emma shook her head. We weren't allowed to know real names. Everyone was just doctor or nurse or teacher. But Kelly found out his real name somehow. She wrote it down and hid it in our room. What name? Dr. Webb. Kelly said he was the one in charge of everything. Sarah felt recognition stir in the back of her mind. Dr. Webb. The name was familiar, but she couldn't place it. Someone from medical school? A colleague? A former supervisor? Her phone buzzed with a text message. The number was blocked, but the message made her blood freeze. Doctor. Chen, Emma should not have left the facility. Return her within 24 hours, or there will be consequences for your family. Dr. Webb Sarah stared at the phone, her hands shaking. They were being watched. Right now, in this hospital room, they were being monitored. Emma, she said quietly, we need to leave. Now. But Emma was already standing up, her face pale with terror. He found us, didn't he? He always finds us when we try to leave. Not this time. Sarah helped Emma down from the examination table. This time we're going to get help. They slipped out of the examination room and headed for the hospital's administrative offices. Sarah's mind was racing through possibilities. If Dr. Webb really had been operating an underground facility for 15 years, there had to be records, paper trails, some kind of evidence. In her office, Sarah locked the door and immediately began searching through her computer files. She accessed the hospital's personnel database, then the state medical licensing board, then every professional directory she could find. There, she said, pointing at the screen, Dr. Marcus Webb, licensed psychiatrist, specializing in developmental psychology and childhood trauma. Emma peered at the photograph on the screen. That's him. That's the man who took us. Sarah read through Dr. Webb's professional profile. He'd been affiliated with Riverside General until 2010, when he'd left to pursue private research. His current address was listed as the Riverside Research Institute, located 15 miles outside of town. Emma, is this where you were kept? The Riverside Research Institute. Emma studied the address carefully. I don't know. We were never told where we were, but Kelly said we were under a big building with lots of offices upstairs. Sarah picked up her phone to call the police, then hesitated. Emma had said Dr. Webb claimed to have people in hospitals and police stations. If that was true, a regular police report could alert the wrong people. Instead, she dialed a number she'd memorized years ago but never used. Dr. Jennifer Mills, a friend from medical school who now worked with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Jennifer, it's Sarah Chen. I need help with something, and it's urgent. Sarah? It's 3 a.m. What's going on? I have a patient who claims she was held in an underground facility for 15 years. She's identified a suspect who may still be operating in this area. Sarah looked at Emma, who was sitting quietly in the corner chair. Jennifer, I think we're dealing with something much bigger than a single kidnapping. There was a long pause. Sarah, can you get to a secure location, somewhere away from the hospital? Why? Because if what you're describing is real, your patient isn't the first person to report this kind of situation. We've been tracking similar cases across 3 states for the past 2 years. Sarah felt the world shift around her. How many cases? 11 confirmed reports of people claiming to have escaped from underground facilities. All of them described similar conditions: medical experimentation, psychological manipulation, long-term imprisonment. Jennifer's voice became urgent. Sarah, most of those people disappeared again within 48 hours of making their reports. Disappeared how? Taken from hospitals, police stations, even federal custody. Whoever is running this operation has resources and connections we haven't been able to track. Sarah looked at Emma, who was staring out the window with those eerily young eyes. Jennifer, what do I do? Get out of there. Now take your patient and go somewhere public, somewhere with lots of people and security cameras. I'm sending a team to Riverside, but it'll take them 6 hours to get there. Where should we go? Anywhere but where you are now. And Sarah, don't trust local law enforcement until my team arrives. We have reason to believe this operation has infiltrated multiple agencies. After hanging up, Sarah turned to Emma. We're leaving the hospital. There are people coming who can help us, but we need to stay safe until they get here. Emma nodded solemnly. Kelly always said this day would come. She said someday someone would try to help us, and we'd have to be brave enough to accept that help. They gathered Sarah's personal belongings and headed for the parking garage. As they walked, Sarah's mind kept returning to one detail that didn't make sense. If Dr. Webb's operation was so sophisticated, so well protected, how had Emma really escaped? And why had she been allowed to reach the hospital? In the parking garage, Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. Doctor. Chen, you now have 23 hours and 47 minutes. Every hour you delay costs the life of one of the others. Choose wisely. Emma saw the message over Sarah's shoulder. He's not bluffing, she said quietly. When people try to leave or tell the truth, bad things happen to the ones who stayed behind. Sarah stared at the message, understanding the terrible choice she was being forced to make. Save Emma and condemn 6 other people to death, or return Emma to captivity and hope that the FBI could find another way to help. But as they got into Sarah's car, Emma said something that changed everything. "Sarah, there's something I didn't tell you about how I escaped." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Kelly didn't just help me get out. She gave me something Dr. Webb doesn't know I have." "What kind of something?" Emma reached into her shoe and pulled out a small folded paper and a key. Kelly had been there longer than anyone. She'd learned to stay quiet and listen when the staff thought no one could hear. Over the years, she'd overheard access codes, names, locations. Emma held the items carefully. She wrote everything down and hid it where Dr. Webb would never think to look. Sarah stared at the paper and key, realizing that Emma Rodriguez wasn't just a victim who'd escaped. She was carrying evidence that had been gathered through years of careful observation and courage. "Emma, what do these unlock?" "The paper has the current access codes Kelly overheard last week, and the key opens a storage room where she hid everything else, names of staff, schedules, even some documents she managed to take when they threw them away." Emma's voice became determined. Kelly spent years planning this escape, learning every detail about how the facility worked. "Emma, we need to get this to the FBI team." "But first," Emma said, her expression becoming determined, "we need to get the others out. All of them. Because Kelly died to give us this chance, and I'm not going to waste her sacrifice." As they drove through the pre-dawn darkness toward whatever safety they could find, Sarah realized she was no longer just treating a patient. She was joining a rescue mission that had been planned by a teenage girl who'd given her life to expose one of the most horrific conspiracies in modern history. But first, they had to survive the next 23 hours. Sarah drove through the empty streets of Riverside, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she tried to process everything Emma had told her. The paper and key sat in Emma's lap like evidence of years of careful planning and desperate hope. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, staring out the passenger window at the dark houses they passed. "Somewhere safe until the FBI arrives." Sarah checked her rearview mirror for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. The streets appeared empty, but she couldn't shake the feeling they were being followed. "There is no safe place," Emma said quietly. "Dr. Webb has people everywhere. Kelly found that out when she tried to get help the first time." Sarah felt her stomach clench. "Kelly tried to escape before. 3 years ago. She made it out for 2 days, got to a police station in the next county. But they brought her back." Emma's voice became smaller. "Doctor, Webb made all of us watch what happened to her after that. He said it was a lesson about the consequences of betrayal." Sarah forced herself to focus on driving, but her mind was spinning with the implications. If local law enforcement had returned Kelly to Dr. Webb 3 years ago, then the corruption went deeper than anyone suspected. Her phone rang. Dr. Jennifer Mills. "Sarah, change of plans. My team can't get to Riverside until tonight, but I've been reviewing the files on similar cases, and there's something you need to know." "What?" "The Riverside Research Institute that you found. It was shut down by the state health department 6 months ago for unlicensed medical research. The building is supposed to be empty." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Emma, is the facility actually under the Research Institute building?" Emma shook her head. "I don't think so. Kelly said we were under something older, something that had been there for a long time before Dr. Webb came." Jennifer's voice crackled through the phone speaker. "Sarah, there's more. We've identified at least 3 other similar facilities in neighboring states, all connected to something called Project Legacy." It's a long-term research program that's been operating since the 1980s. Project Legacy? Psychological research into childhood development, memory formation, and social adaptation. All of it conducted on kidnapped children who are told their families abandoned them. Jennifer paused. Sarah, this isn't just about Dr. Webb. This is about a network of researchers who believe their work justifies any cost. Emma suddenly sat up straighter. Sarah, pull over. What? Pull over now. There's a white van behind us. Sarah checked her mirrors and saw it, a plain white van that had been following them for the past several blocks, keeping a careful distance, but matching their every turn. Jennifer, we're being followed. Get to the most public place you can find, somewhere with lots of people and security cameras. Sarah spotted a 24-hour diner ahead, its neon sign flickering in the dawn light. She pulled into the parking lot and saw the white van continue past, but she caught a glimpse of the driver, a man in a white coat. We're going inside, Sarah said, ending the call. The diner was nearly empty except for a few early morning shift workers and a waitress who looked like she'd been there all night. Sarah and Emma chose a booth near the front window where they could see the parking lot. Order something, Sarah whispered. Act normal. But Emma was staring at the menu with confusion. I don't understand some of these words. They didn't teach us about... What's a panini? Sarah realized that Emma's 15 years in captivity had left her with the food knowledge of a 7-year-old. The simple menu items that any adult would recognize were completely foreign to her. I'll order for both of us, Sarah said gently. While they waited for food, Emma pulled out the paper again. Kelly said there are names and schedules on that paper, information about when the guards change shifts, which doors are usually unlocked, and the codes she heard Dr. Webb use. Emma looked at both of them. She said if we ever got this far, if we ever got free with the information, there was one more thing we had to do. What? We have to go to the facility. We have to use what Kelly learned to get the others out ourselves. Sarah stared at her. Emma, that's suicide. Dr. Webb will be expecting us. Maybe, but Kelly spent 3 years listening and watching. She learned the guard schedules, the door codes, which staff members might help us. Emma's voice became determined. Kelly died believing we could save them. I'm not going to let her be wrong. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. Another message from Dr. Webb. Dr. Chen, you now have 21 hours. Emma is carrying stolen property that belongs to the United States government. Return her and the materials, or we will be forced to take more direct action. Sarah showed the message to Emma, who went pale. He knows about the paper and key, Emma whispered. How? Kelly said they put tracking devices in us when we were little. She removed hers years ago, but mine... Emma looked down at her arm. I never learned how to take it out. Sarah felt panic rising. If Emma was still carrying a tracking device, then Dr. Webb knew exactly where they were at all times. We need to get that device out of you, now. Emma rolled up her sleeve, revealing a small scar on her forearm. Kelly said it was right under here, but she warned me that removing it wrong could damage nerves or arteries. Sarah examined the scar carefully. As a psychiatrist, she'd had basic medical training, but surgical removal was beyond her expertise. However, she could see the faint outline of something beneath the skin, a small, rectangular object about the size of a rice grain. Emma, I can try to remove it, but we'll need proper medical supplies. There's a pharmacy across the street, Emma said, pointing through the diner window. Kelly taught me what tools would be needed. Sarah looked at this remarkable young woman who'd spent 15 years in captivity, but still had the courage to guide her own rescue. Emma, are you sure you want to do this? Emma nodded firmly. Kelly died to give me this chance. I'm not going to let Dr. Webb find us because I was too scared to be brave. They paid for their untouched food and headed across the street to the pharmacy. Sarah bought surgical supplies while Emma waited in the feminine products aisle, knowing that no one would look for them there. In the pharmacy's restroom, Sarah carefully cleaned Emma's arm with antiseptic. This is going to hurt. I've been hurt worse, Emma said simply. With steady hands, Sarah made a small incision along the existing scar line. Emma gritted her teeth but didn't make a sound. Within minutes, Sarah had extracted a small electronic device that looked like a sophisticated medical implant. "What do we do with it?" Sarah asked. Emma smiled for the first time since they'd left the hospital. "Kelly taught me that too." She took the tracking device and dropped it into a cup of coffee left behind by another customer, watching as the electronics sparked and died. "Now he can't find us," Emma said. "But Sarah, we only have about 12 hours before he realizes the signal is gone and starts looking harder." Sarah bandaged Emma's arm and helped her back to the car. "Emma, the FBI team won't be here until tonight. What do we do for 12 hours? Emma pulled out the folded paper again. "Kelly said if we ever got this far, if we ever got free with the evidence, there was one more thing we had to do." "What?" "We have to go to the facility. We have to use this information to get the others out ourselves." Sarah stared at her. "Emma, that's suicide. Dr. Webb will be expecting us." "Maybe, but Kelly spent 3 years listening and watching. She learned the guard schedules, the door codes, which staff members might help us." Emma's voice became determined. "Kelly died believing we could save them. I'm not going to let her be wrong." As they drove toward the coordinates Emma provided, Sarah realized she was no longer just treating a patient or protecting a witness. She was about to attempt a rescue mission planned by a dead teenager, using evidence gathered through years of careful observation and desperate hope. But as the sun rose over Riverside, casting long shadows across the abandoned buildings on the outskirts of town, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were driving toward something far more dangerous than either of them imagined. "Emma," she said quietly, "what if this is exactly what Dr. Webb wants us to do?" Emma looked at her with those eerily mature eyes. "Then at least we'll go down fighting." The abandoned textile mill sat on the edge of Riverside like a monument to forgotten industry. Its broken windows stared out across empty fields, and weeds grew through cracks in the parking lot where workers had once gathered for shift changes. Sarah parked behind a collapsed loading dock, hiding her car from the main road. "This is it," Emma said, staring at the building with a mixture of fear and determination. "Kelly said the entrance is in the basement, hidden behind what looks like an electrical panel." She overheard Dr. Webb giving the access code to a new staff member last week. Sarah studied the mill's exterior. It looked genuinely abandoned. No signs of recent activity, no security systems visible, no indication that anything was hidden beneath, which made it perfect cover for a clandestine operation. "Emma, how do we know this isn't a trap?" "We don't. But Kelly said Dr. Webb's biggest weakness was his arrogance. He never believed any of us were smart enough to really listen and remember." Emma pulled the folded paper from her pocket. "This has the door codes and the guard schedule Kelly memorized." Sarah felt her heart racing as they approached the mill's main entrance. The door hung open on rusted hinges, revealing an interior filled with debris and decay. They made their way through the abandoned factory floor, following Emma's directions toward a staircase that led to the basement. In the basement, behind rows of old machinery, Emma found what she was looking for, an electrical panel that looked slightly newer than everything around it. "Kelly said the access code changes weekly," but she overheard Dr. Webb tell someone it's always based on the current date. Emma consulted her paper and typed in a 6-digit sequence. The panel swung open like a door, revealing a modern elevator shaft. "Jesus," Sarah whispered. They descended in silence, the elevator carrying them deep underground. When the doors opened, they stepped into a corridor that looked like a cross between a hospital and a prison. White walls, fluorescent lighting, and the antiseptic smell that Emma had described. "This way," Emma whispered, leading Sarah down a series of hallways lined with numbered doors. "Kelly said the guards change shifts at 6 a.m. We have maybe 20 minutes before they do their next patrol." As they walked, Sarah began to hear sounds, voices, footsteps, the hum of medical equipment. The facility was very much active. "How many staff members?" Sarah asked. Kelly counted maybe 8 during night shift, but they're spread across 3 levels. Emma stopped at a junction of hallways. "Sarah, Kelly said if we could create a distraction on level 3, the guards would leave the dormitory level unattended for about 10 minutes. Sarah felt the weight of what they were attempting. Even if everything went perfectly, how could they evacuate 7 traumatized people, some of whom had been captive since childhood, through an underground facility while being pursued by armed guards? They reached level 2 without encountering anyone. Emma led Sarah to a room filled with sleeping quarters, narrow beds arranged in rows like a military barracks. On the beds, Sarah could see the sleeping forms of children and young adults, all dressed in identical gray clothing. "Oh, God," Sarah breathed. "They're all real." Emma moved to the nearest bed and gently shook the shoulder of a teenage boy. "David, wake up, we're leaving." The boy's eyes opened slowly, then went wide with recognition and hope. "Emma, Kelly said you'd come back. She said you'd bring help." "David, gather everyone quietly. We're leaving, all of us." Emma's voice carried an authority that belonged to someone much older. "Use the route Kelly showed us." But before they could organize the evacuation, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Sarah heard the sound of heavy footsteps echoing from multiple directions. "They know," Emma said, "but we can still get everyone out if we move fast." They began rousing the other captives, children who looked at Emma with desperate hope, teenagers who moved with the uncertain gait of people who'd forgotten how to be free, young adults whose eyes held the same childlike quality as Emma's. But before they could reach the exit, Dr. Webb appeared at the end of the corridor, flanked by 4 security guards in tactical gear. "Emma Rodriguez," he called out, his voice calm and clinical. "You've made a serious mistake. Return to your quarters immediately, and your punishment will be minimal." Emma stepped forward, placing herself between Dr. Webb and the group of captives. "These people are leaving with me, all of them." Dr. Webb smiled, and Sarah saw something cold and predatory in his expression. "Emma, you're still a child, despite what that misguided girl Kelly told you. You belong here, under proper supervision. As does Dr. Chen." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "How do you know my name?" "Dr. Sarah Chen, forensic psychiatrist, graduated Johns Hopkins 2015, specializing in childhood trauma and memory recovery." Dr. Webb's smile widened. "Did you really think your involvement in this situation was coincidental?" Emma grabbed Sarah's arm. "What does he mean?" Dr. Webb gestured to his security team, who began advancing down the corridor. "Dr. Chen was always intended to be part of Project Legacy. Her expertise in memory manipulation and trauma psychology makes her invaluable to our research. Emma's escape was simply the mechanism to bring her to us." Sarah stared at him in horror. "You orchestrated Emma's escape? You let her suffer for 15 years just to get to me?" "Dr. Chen, you've published extensively on techniques for recovering suppressed memories in trauma victims. Imagine how valuable those same techniques could be for implanting false memories, for creating completely controllable subjects. Dr. Webb's voice became almost excited. Emma was our proof of concept, a child whose original personality was successfully suppressed and replaced with our designed parameters. Emma went white. That's not true. I remember everything. I remember my real life, my real family. Do you, Emma? Or do you remember what we allowed you to remember? What we specifically chose to preserve to make you a more effective test subject? Dr. Webb looked directly at Sarah. Doctor, Chen, everything Emma has told you about her captivity was carefully constructed to ensure you would become emotionally invested in her case. Sarah felt the world tilting around her. The paper? Kelly's information? Kelly Martinez was indeed a subject who became problematic. Her death was unfortunate but necessary. However, the information Emma carries contains exactly what we wanted, Doctor. Chen to see carefully edited details that would convince her of the scope of our operation without revealing our true objectives. Emma was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Number Kelly was real. Our friendship was real. The other people are all real, Emma, but your memories of planning an escape, of receiving help from Kelly, of being given evidence to expose our operation, those memories were implanted during your final conditioning sessions. Dr. Webb gestured to the captives gathered behind Emma. Even your desire to rescue them was programmed into you as part of the test. Sarah looked at Emma, then at the terrified captives, then at Dr. Webb's confident smile. Even if that's true, these people are still prisoners. They're still victims. They're research subjects in a legally authorized program designed to advance our understanding of human psychology and memory formation. Dr. Chen, you're going to help us take that research to the next level. Sarah made a decision that would either save 7 lives or doom them all. She grabbed Emma's hand and shouted to the captives, "Run!" Everyone run toward the exit. Chaos erupted in the corridor. The 7 captives scattered while security guards tried to maintain control. In the confusion, Sarah and Emma managed to reach the stairwell leading toward the surface. Sarah, Emma gasped as they climbed. What if he's right? What if my memories aren't real? Sarah looked at this brave young woman who had risked everything to save people she'd been told might not even exist. Emma, real or programmed, you chose to help them. That choice is yours, regardless of how you got here. They emerged into the abandoned mill just as the first FBI vehicles arrived in the parking lot, their lights flashing in the early morning sun. But as federal agents surrounded the building, Sarah realized that Dr. Webb had been right about one thing. This was far from over. If Project Legacy had been operating for decades, then exposing one facility would only force the operation deeper underground. Emma stood beside her, watching as the rescued captives were brought to safety. But Sarah couldn't shake Dr. Webb's words about implanted memories and carefully orchestrated escapes. Emma, she said quietly, regardless of what Dr. Webb claims about your memories, you saved these people. That's real. Emma nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. Sarah, Kelly told me something before I escaped. She said if we ever got this far, we had to make sure the truth was told completely. What do you mean? She said Dr. Webb wasn't working alone, that there were others, people in government positions, who knew about Project Legacy and helped protect it. Emma's voice became determined. Kelly died believing that exposing just one facility wouldn't be enough. Sarah looked at this remarkable young woman, realizing that the fight for justice was far from over. Emma, the FBI will investigate Dr. Webb's connections. But Emma was staring at the abandoned mill with a determination that belonged to someone much older than her apparent mental age. Kelly said the truth has a way of spreading. once someone is brave enough to speak it. As federal agents led Dr. Webb and his staff away in handcuffs, and as the rescued captives were reunited with families they'd been told had forgotten them, Sarah realized that her involvement in this case was far from over. Dr. Webb had been right about one thing: she was always meant to be part of Project Legacy, but not as a researcher, as a liberator. "Emma," she said, "I think Kelly's mission isn't finished yet." Emma smiled, and for the first time since Sarah had met her, it was the smile of someone who had hope for tomorrow. "Kelly always said that the truth has a way of spreading once someone is brave enough to speak it." But as they watched the last of the captives emerge from the underground facility that had stolen their childhoods, Sarah knew that somewhere else, other researchers were already moving to protect their own secrets. The war for the truth was just beginning, and Emma Rodriguez, whether her memories were real or implanted, had just become the most important witness in the fight to expose the remaining pieces of one of the most horrific conspiracies in modern history. 6 months later, Sarah would receive a call about a confused young man who had appeared at a hospital in the next state, claiming to be one of 3 children who had disappeared from a local park in 2010. He would ask specifically for the doctor who helped Emma Rodriguez. And Sarah would realize that Kelly Martinez's plan had been even more extensive than anyone had imagined. The truth was spreading, one rescued person at a time.